if people walk out of here going like, I can't remember anything that we ate, I can't remember what we drank, but man, we had a good time. That's the best for me. Like if they remember the food, great. If they remember the wine, fantastic. But I want them to have a really, really great experience.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Well, it's an absolute honour to be in Onzieme, Louis Couttoupes, in your home this time. This chat's a little bit different than normal. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's been a busy winter, busier than expected. So everyone's kind of tired and looking forward to summer, but otherwise real good.
Busy that's good to hear. You've had an extraordinary sort of beginning to owning your own restaurant with a string of accolades and the challenges of all sorts of things in hospitality. But how has it been owning your own restaurant for the first time? I
mean, I think anyone that's been through owning any small business probably knows that there's a different set of challenges when you put your name on the door, basically. It's a 7-day job, there's no doubt. I think it's always fun. There's always something to learn. I think last time we spoke, saying like people kind of also don't realize, I think the other pressures that it takes on your life and that kind of stuff, which is, it's a decision you make with your eyes open. And you do it because you love it. And I still love it. I still love every day, even the hard ones. But just learning more and more stuff every single day. It's been an amazing sort of a genuine privilege to be able to do this, I think, in a city like Canberra.
Your food has a real trademark to it. What's it like, that creative side of things and expressing yourself through the food? What's that experience had on you? I
think when I started at Rockford, sort of taking over the menu there, that was a real sort of one of an exponential kind of increase in kind of like creative sort of things that were happening, I guess, for me, because it was just immediately just this change in sort of the situation. It wasn't just like cooking, and being told what to do. It's like, cool, this is like it's writing menus, it's ordering, it's taking all that kind of stuff on. And I think one of the things I've always been aware of, not being a classically trained chef, is I'm still aware of my limitations very much. I think my strength in the kitchen is always going to be creativity. I've always been able to sort of think about things in my head and try and get them right. That's the hardest part for me, I guess. Like the technical aspect of it, I've got a great team of guys who, to be honest, most of them have worked in kitchens longer than I have. I can throw ideas around and I can make 99% of the time I can sort of execute it and make it work exactly the way I kind of imagine it in my head. But I'm not the kind of chef that spends 2 to 3 weeks like tweaking this a gram here and a gram there. It's more of an intuitive style of cooking. Especially because we do everything over wood fire. That's probably the biggest trademark that I find. I don't know, it's the funnest part about being in the kitchen for me, is this a more, I don't want to say rudimentary, but it's like you're cooking over charcoal. You're doing it. Every culture and in history basically is cooked over fire or open flame at some point. And some of them maintain that, and some of them have really lent into that. And the creativity that some people feel like it maybe limits them, because you can't have a steamed dish, you can't have a pan fried dish. But when you realize all the different sort of styles of wood fire cooking, it opens up this different kind of creativity. You need to really sort of get your balance right. You need to get, all of those primary flavors, sort of your seasoning, your sort of acidity and that kind of stuff. But it does open up different styles of creativity that I absolutely love, that you don't have in a conventional kitchen. And it just means that we can just muck around with stuff. And it's like, hey, that tastes good. Let's serve that. Let's tweak it here and there. Very rarely do we taste a dish in its completion before we actually put it on the menu, which is probably heresy in most kitchens. But it's like, once like, cool, I know this sauce tastes good, that's going to taste amazing with beef, or that's going to taste great with pork, or once you get those principles down, that on a broccoli dish, going to be amazing. Let's roll with it tomorrow.
It's sort of a glance at your menu. It always showcases sort of best-in-class produce and proteins and seafood, all sorts of things like that. Tell us about your creative process, and like, where does a dish start? Like, how do you create a dish? Do you work from best ingredient first? Or? Yeah,
I mean, it's one of the things I think's been the primary focus of a lot of chefs recently, is getting really good product so you don't have to do too much to it. Like, we're not a kitchen that has inverted this or foams of that and that kind of thing. We want the ingredients to be what sing, and for people to just walk away going like, damn, that was tasty. And the best thing you can do for that is just start with, great pork. And when you're dealing with that kind of stuff on a daily or a weekly basis to write your menus, sometimes you can't get it. You can get it for 1 week and you can't get it for another week. Like, you have to be able to be flexible to write a menu, trust your chefs, trust your creative process that something's going to taste good because the ingredients taste good. Anything from there is, just window dressing, I guess.
Tell us a little bit about pork and sort of maybe some of the farmers that you've connected with that, you'd like to use their product and how that weaves through the menu.
We've done like whole pork belly in the wood-fired oven. We've done racks of cutlets. We use it in a whole bunch of other ingredients. So we can make in-house terrine, all the stuff like that. Pig's trotters in the jus that we're going to have today. Like all those kinds of things. Like I'm always trying to find different cuts of meat, and there's a few places like the guys from Dewsbury we talked about. We've tried to reach out and try to sort of engage with them, and sometimes logistically it's not always easy to do because of the economic situation at the moment for a lot of like the abattoirs. Like the abattoir situation in New South Wales hasn't been great, so you might be able to connect with someone locally, but being able to get their product on your menus sometimes a different kind of equation, which is really sort of, I think it's probably frustrating on both sides because like we really want to showcase this ingredient, but because of the like I don't know what exactly the situation with the abattoirs, but if they can't get animal or beast to sort of slaughter, we can't then get it because we can't get it directly from them because there's a whole bunch of legal issues for legal reasons that have like perfectly justifiable. I think Borrowdale, which is a really common one, you'll see all around Canberra, where we've got a whole bunch of stuff from them, and Long Valley Paul's a really, really good providor. He knows how to connect with these guys. He knows how to sort of engage with all different meat suppliers. He's got a great background working for Vic's Meats, and now he's using some of those connections and sort of building his own ones to directly engage with individual suppliers or individual producers. So we're getting some great stuff from him, and that's only been a recent development, which is a really good one because he'll drop in, he'll sort of give us a call and tell us what he's got, and some of those producers are not sort of the really big ones where it's like you can get cartons of this and cartons of that. Like we had a really long chat with him last week about the kinds of cuts we want to get on, and jowl, which we're going to try today, was one of the main ones that we really wanted to start showcasing because again, it's a lesser known cut. It's generally, I'd say, probably just thrown into sausages and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally.
But, getting those kinds of things, we're sort of talking to him about getting whole belly and that kind of stuff that we can do our own things with and produce such a big range of ingredients. So it's such a big range of different dishes from all the different things that piggy can be, cut off a pork, like as Fergus Henderson's always saying, using the whole animal. That's kind of that's how I always approach sort of looking at any meat that we put on is, rather than just using the main primal cuts, which make up such a small proportion of an animal, trying to make sure that we're using the ones that don't otherwise just get scrapped or turn into dog food, because if you cook them right, they're friggin' incredible.
Totally. I want to get to pork jowl in a minute, but you mentioned trotters. Tell us a bit about how you do trotters. Well,
Ryan has actually been sort of leading the charge in the kitchen with the trotters. I wish we could do like a whole dish. I mean, Nick Hill up in Porcine, I think his stuff looks incredible. I've never been able to eat there, but we've sort of caught up every now and again in Sydney. You just never open on the same kind of days that I'm in Sydney, unfortunately. But his trotter dish is, I think, one of the sort of most, one of the dishes I want to eat the most at the moment. We get them, and we actually we use them as a component in a sort of really rich jus. So we'll roast down a whole bunch of other kinds of bones, but the pork trotters themselves, because there's so much gelatin in them and so much just the tasty stuff. They're not boiling for making a jus. You've got 50 litres of stock, you reduce down to about 2 litres, and Ryan's got one of them simmering away, and there was probably 5-10 kilos of roasted pork trotters that went in there just to sort of get all of that deliciousness. And you'll taste it in the sauce we're going to put on the jowl today, because it's just that mouth-coatingly rich sort of sauce. Yeah, it's absolutely delicious.
Well, as you mentioned before, pork jowl is incredible if you do it right. take us through the dish from start to finish. What do you do?
All right. So with this one, it's something I've been again toying with in my head a little bit. It's not a full dish we've got on the menu, but depending on how today goes, we might see it on the menu a little bit more permanently. But again, we've got these lovely Borrowdale pork cheeks that have like an incredible amount of fat under the skin. Over the weekend, I pulled them out, and we have given them the sort of Cantonese treatment of like getting pork crackling, which is blanching it under boiling hot water just to sort of open the pores up, get the skin nice and supple, and then spike it just to pierce the skin so that when it cooks, the fat will render out, and then also brush it with a red Chinese vinegar. That vinegar also helps to dry the skin out, adds a touch of flavor, and that hopefully is going to give us that. Like that's cooked at the right temperature and cooked in the right kind of ways, you can get the most incredibly sort of puffy pork crackling. This one I've then also cured in koji. Koji being sort of fermented rice. It's one of the sort of the ingredients, I think, probably of the decade. Been used in Japan for centuries. It's the same sort of base bacteria that they use to make miso, soy, mirin, all that kind of stuff. Acts as an amazing tenderizer. The enzymes sort of break down and tenderize meat, but also flavor it incredibly. So it's been sitting in that for 2 to 3 days just to sort of really sort of like marinate it, tenderize it, and also hopefully get that really, really crunchy skin. We tried one of these on Saturday, and just, I don't know, the fattiness through a pork jowl is just an incredible thing.
Do you have any, you've detailed a few different cuts that you've had on the wood fire. Do you have any tips or tricks for cooking pork over sort of wood fire like that? One
of the things you learn when you're cooking over wood fire is, I was having a chat to Ben from Agnes, like back at the GT Awards, and one of the things we were talking about cooking over fire is when you get new guys in the kitchen, it takes a while for them to learn, but 50% of their job and 50% of their time is tending a fire. The other 50% is cooking. Making sure you're cooking over the right kind of temperatures and you're paying constant attention to what you're cooking is vitally important. I think not cooking something especially as fatty as pork over too high a flame or too high a heat is really, really important. Rendering that fat out is going to be the most important thing. And good resting time as well, hugely important, because like we're talking about such high temperatures. If you do it over too high a temperature or with too much flame, for example, the flare-ups are going to be what sort of are your ending. Like it's hard to come back from that, because like once the fat has started to render and then starts to drip out and you get flare-ups, the whole thing catches on fire, you're kind of done. So constantly moving things around, moving the height of it, moving the sort of like the location of it over your charcoal, but constantly tending it. It's not a set and forget type thing.
Yeah.
I think being aware of the cuts you're doing as well. Like we've never had anything like tenderloin on. It's always been the slightly fattier cuts, the ones that they're not the more expensive ones at your butcher, but that's kind of the way I like to cook anyway. Yeah. But it means that you do need to be aware of the fattiness in them, absolutely 100%. Being like tending your fire, if you're going to do it over wood fire, that's the most important thing.
You mentioned that you didn't have a traditional sort of path as a chef, but your evidence of that it kind of doesn't matter what the path is. What would your advice be to a young chef that's looking to make a career in food?
Trying to say this without being kind of coming across as pessimistic, but you need to be aware of what the industry is. I think one of the things I always ask young chefs when they want to interview or they want to sort of try out is why are you doing this? And that was what was asked of me, and it was a really big turning point when I was like, okay, this is why. It's not just that I love cooking, because if someone's like, I've loved cooking for the rest of my whole life, I mean, you'd be hard pressed finding a chef that didn't say that. But you need to have a love of more than just cooking, because being a chef is so much more than that. Like, let's be perfectly honest, it's antisocial. The hours aren't great. You end up spending more time with the people in a very confined space in a kitchen cooking, and it's hot, it's sweaty, it's dirty. You've got to understand that, and you've got to sort of be prepared for that. And if you can take on a love of hospitality more generally, then you're going to enjoy yourself. And that's when you're going to, like, excel. That's when you're going to succeed. It's when you're going to have the most fun, because you're throwing yourself into this. It's not something that's like, this is a day job. There are a lot of chefs that, they get to a point in their life where it's like, this is a skill I have, and that's fine. That's great. But I also sort of look at young chefs who like have this somewhat romanticized idea of what being a chef is like, and sort of dispelling that and sort of understanding what it is really like. Try it, by all means. Dive straight in. And if it's not what you thought it was, it's not the end of the world. You don't need to have your entire identity caught up in being a chef because you thought it was going to be like Bradley Cooper or The Bear or whatever. But I think embracing everything that chefing can provide and hospitality can provide is, I don't know, once you're in it, it's something that you sort of can't really shake. That creativity, the kind of, there is an adrenaline rush during service, and you kind of need to sort of, I think, balance that with like, cool, this isn't something you want to self-medicate with alcohol and all that kind of stuff. Like the way everyone has this perception of it, you need to understand how to ride that. You need to be aware and prepared, and to take care of yourself as well, because that's the hardest part, I think, about being a chef. And if you can, it's an incredibly fulfilling sort of place to be. If you're an artist and you express yourself through painting or sculpture, that's your way to do it. But I don't want to say like chefs are artists, because I know that sounds kind of trite, whatever. But if you are a chef and your way of expressing your personality and sort of the way you get enjoyment through creativity is through food and cooking, go for it.
Well, it's interesting to say that, because you've made that leap from sort of the public service into hospitality because of your love for cooking. How does it make you feel when you're in the kitchen, when you're dealing with the fire, when you're feeding sort of a full restaurant?
It's pretty surreal. I remember the first time when we had the pop-up down the road, the first time I looked up and it wasn't just a friends and family night, and we had a full restaurant. I was like, Jesus, like people are actually coming here. And you do have to sort of pinch yourself every now and again and remember that people parting with the money that they have earned for something that you're producing is a pretty special thing. Like going out to dinner these days, it's not a cheap sort of proposition. Cost of everything going up, meaning that, going out for dinner can be like, it's a big commitment, and we need to be respectful of that. And it's still one of those moments where I'm like, wow, people are coming in and they want to ask about wine, and they want to sort of have recommendations about food, and they're trusting us. It's pretty weird. And what's even weirder about it actually is because we're in Kingston, close to the sort of Parliamentary Triangle, and a lot of the guys I used to work with are up on the hill at the moment, I get a lot of them coming in and having a chat about, knowing and working with them 12 years ago. That's pretty wild, because they're like, yeah, you remember when we used to sort of be writing that brief and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, now you're here and now we're drinking. It's a pretty special moment every now and again. And to think that, it feels like it all happened yesterday. And I was looking back at it and going like, man, I've been doing this for like 8 years now. Yeah. Owned my own place for coming up on 3. And it's a pretty wild thought. 2 university degrees, 10 years in the public service, and all of a sudden you're like, no, this isn't the life I want to have. I much prefer longer hours, less pay, but I love being surrounded by the people we have working here. I love the environment we've created, and I really love, one of the things I say to people as well is like my favorite meals in the entire world. I can't tell you a thing that I ate. Like there's a place in Spain I went with my partner and a friend years ago now, and we were sitting right by the water. It was a seafood restaurant. It was like Fawlty Towers-esque level of kind of like confusion. But we just drank jugs of pretty crappy sangria and just ate grilled and deep fried like seafood all night. Yeah. And it was one of the best meals of my life just because I had so much fun. And if people walk out of here going like, I can't remember anything that we ate, I can't remember what we drank, but man, we had a good time. That's the best for me. Like if they remember the food, great. If they remember the wine, fantastic. But I want them to have a really, really great experience. And being able to do that for people, especially as like it is really, really weird having the guys I used to work with come in an office job and being able to talk about that. And that's pretty wild.
Well, it's pretty amazing what you're doing here, and as always, an absolute honour to catch up. Looking forward to seeing this jowl dish.
Yes,
let's get into it.
It's gonna be good. Thanks, man.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production
in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.